play with the butterflies. Mesmerized, mesmerized by you.
Hey, you guys. So let's just jump straight into it today because I don't even have the energy to ease into this one. Like, honestly, that's kind of the point though. But I used to wear I'm tired like a badge of honor. Okay. I used to think that being exhausted meant I was doing something right. You know, that if I wasn't drained, that meant I wasn't grinding hard enough. You know, if I wasn't overwhelmed, that meant that I wasn't pushing hard enough. And if I wasn't just out here running on fumes, like that meant I wasn't that girl that I was striving to be yet, you know? But over time, burnout humbled me, okay? And when I say humbled me, I mean set me all the way down, okay? It didn't ask for permission. It ain't a care about my to-do list. You know, it didn't care about my goals, my plans, my schedule, my hustle, none of that, okay? My body said, girl, we are done, okay? My mind said, I cannot hold all of this anymore. And my spirit said, you've been ignoring me for a little too long now, okay? And honestly, I had no choice but to listen. See, burnout doesn't always show up as just being tired. You know, sometimes it shows up as being irritable, you know, over the smallest things, or crying and not even knowing why, or feeling numb when you should feel excited, or being productive but not being present. You know, it's the showing up but feeling empty while you do it. You know, I was getting everything done, but I was tired in a way that sleep alone could not fix. And see, that's when it hit me. You know, I wasn't just exhausted. I was overextended, overly responsible, overly available, overly giving, overly proving, overly carrying. And I was under resting, under receiving, under listening to myself. You know, I had made my strength my identity. You know, the strong one, the reliable one, the one who always figures it out. You know, the one that people call when they don't know what to do. But nobody tells you that being the strong one can quietly turn into self-neglect. You know, when you're used to holding everything together, you start to believe that you're supposed to do it alone. You know, burnout humbled me by showing me something that I didn't want to admit. You know, I was trying to outrun my limits instead of respecting them. I thought if I just pushed a little harder, you know, worked a little longer, slept a little less, you know, held a little more, then eventually I'd arrive at this version of me who could handle it all. But look, here's the truth. You know, you don't arrive at peace by destroying yourself on the way there. You know, burnout taught me I am not a machine. You know, I am not built for nonstop output. I'm not designed to run forever without rest. You know, and neither are you. And here's the part that really humbled me, you know. For me, burnout didn't look like stopping. It looked like showing up anyway. It looked like being productive on the outside, but disconnected on the inside. It looked like waking up tired, pushing through tired, and laying down still tired. It looked like losing excitement for things that I once prayed for. It looked like caring so much for so long that I stopped knowing the difference between strength and survival. See, that's when I knew, some had to change. And I want to be real with you. Healing didn't start with some big dramatic moment for me. It wasn't a vacation. It wasn't a breakthrough day. It was small, uncomfortable shifts inside my real life. It looked like going to bed before everything was done. It looked like letting the dishes sit. It looked like letting my house be imperfect. It looked like choosing the easiest meal to cook that day without the guilt of it. It looked like telling the truth about my actual capacity, not the version that sounds good, but the real one. What I could handle without breaking. It looked like rest no longer being a reward, but a requirement. Sitting down before I crashed, pausing even when nothing was finished, letting my body win the argument for once. It looked like getting honest about what was draining me that didn't have to be draining. So not every conversation deserved my energy. Not every situation needed my emotional labor, because I realized that some of my yeses were not coming from a place of love anyway. They were coming from pressure. It looked like admitting that doing everything alone was costing me my peace. Letting help come in small ways. Accepting support where I could, and instead of refusing it out of pride. It looked like asking myself different questions, not just what needs to get done, but what actually matters today. What can wait? What do I actually need right now? What would make today even 5% easier for me? None of it was glamorous. None of it was overnight, but it was honest and it was mine. Burnout didn't ruin me. It realigned me. It showed me where I was operating from pressure instead of peace, from fear instead of faith, from survival instead of alignment. It exposed the areas where I was doing too much, trying to prove I was enough. And the truth is, I was always enough. And see, maybe that's what burnout comes to teach us sometimes, Not that we're weak, but that we've been strong in ways that were never sustainable. So if you're watching this and you feel tired, tired in your bones, if you feel like you running on empty, but you still showing up, if you feel like you're carrying everything and everybody, listen, I want you to hear me, man. You're not lazy. You're not failing. You're not ungrateful. You are overextended. And you deserve rest without guilt. You deserve softness without explanation. You deserve help without shame. You deserve peace without having to earn it. Because rest is not a reward. Rest is a requirement. In this season, I'm learning to rest without waiting for permission. To pause without feeling like I'm falling behind. To choose alignment over adrenaline. Burnout humbled me, but it also freed me. So sis, tell me in the comments, what is one way burnout showed up for you this year? And if this episode spoke to you, go ahead and like it, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next episode, and make sure you share this with another woman who's been carrying too much for too long. And for my agents and business moms, make sure you check out the description below and take my free agent personality quiz that'll tell you exactly how you can handle weight and how you manage it and what type of support will best help you so you don't reach burnout. All right, well, that's it for today's episode. If you stayed till the end, I truly, truly appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next Friday. Bye.